No parent could spank their kids either.
Right.
His dad gave out the yardsticks at the hardware store. Finally, he told mother, he said, I'm not going to give any more, you just break them on those boys. Thomas?
Well, one of the most frequently asked questions was, what's it like to grow up being a twin? And the answer we always gave is, we don't know. Never been anything else. We have nothing to compare it to. And as I tell people that occasionally call me by the wrong name, I've been called worse, just not today. But we were the Jones twins because our father had been the postmaster, and then our mother taught first grade, so every kid in town knew us, and every adult, it seemed, knew us. And they knew where we were supposed to be and where we weren't supposed to be, and what we were supposed to be doing and what we weren't supposed to be doing. And unfortunately, their method of communication was often quicker than us. We got out on a raft on the New Res one time, just all by ourselves, and then someone had left it there. It was an old tippy, leaky thing, and thought, well, this is our chance, you know. Get home, my father was ranting and raving why you could have drowned and so forth. Who told on us? We didn't know. But I know that God told on me one time. Because my father had a 1951 Buick Super, straight 8, Dynaflow. And after I got to be 16, I took that out in the country where there was a stretch of about 2 or 3 miles of concrete road. Didn't know what it was doing out there, but anyway. And I got out of the car and looked. There was no house, nobody, nothing. And I got in that car and I revved up that engine and I put it down in low and I went, and then I put her up in drive, and that was it. I was satisfied that that's all that car's going to. It was a Sunday afternoon, beautiful day. I get home, my father says, give me the car keys, you've been out drag racing my car. I didn't know what to say. I handed him the keys. Well, one of our responsibilities was to take our father to the post office. He had to be there at 7. And it was interesting because starting about age 10, we started doing that. And the reason we did was because my mother would take him and then bring the car back. Well, she'd get ready for school or wherever, and sometimes just put on a house coat and take him there. Well, the car quit on her one time, and there she was, stranded. So she delegated it to us. So he wanted us to learn to drive. So starting about age 10, we'd drive him to the post office and bring the car back. No, nothing was ever said about it. And if it needed gas, you'd stop by Reedy's gas station or someplace and put. That's all he asked was to have at least 4 gallons of gas in it. And but then when we got our license, he had trouble finding us. He said, all the time you boys weren't allowed to drive, I didn't have any trouble getting you to take me to work. Now I've got to find someone to do it. But that was one of our responsibilities, was to take him to work and bring the car back. Of course, then when we were playing basketball, Coach Glenn Harden lived across from us in the next area there. It used to be Henson Woods. And he said, if you boys are out front, because we had to be at school early, he said, if you boys are out front when I come by, I'll give you a ride. But he had a 1952, I think it was, Ford with glass pack mufflers on it. So when he fired that up and backed out of his garage, we could hear it. So we never missed a ride with him. And we never told him how we happened to know that he was coming by.
Speaking of responsibilities, when there was a snow, the first biggest responsibility was to shovel the back walk, because the back walk led to the garage where the car was and to the outhouse. And so we had outdoor plumbing until like 49 or something like that, and that was crucial to go have that cleaned off and ready for action. And at night, we took the railroad lantern, kerosene lantern, out to the outhouse, and it would provided light and some heat, but they didn't trust us with it, so our big brother had to go and take the lantern. And people say, well, you had an outhouse? I said, yeah. I said, when you grow up with one, you don't know any different. You have to go, But the problem was with my brother was he had to go when he didn't have to go. And we had to morning stove, and our job when we got home from school was to shake down the ashes and take them out and fill the stove and then fill the coal bucket.
We had cobs first, you had to do this correctly, and then put the coal in, and if you did it right, then you could bank that fire and it'd be warm in the morning. But if you didn't do it right, then the fire would go out, and that's where the water came into the house, and it would freeze, and everybody in the house would know you didn't do your job right. It's a good way to learn responsibility.
We had one faucet, cold water, and one sink. That was it. And it would freeze sometimes. But we did have a pump outside that you could get some water out of.
We had the best well in Villa Grove, according to my father. When somebody got sick, they'd come around and want to get some water out of that well. And when they built on the carport and the garage, they covered it with concrete, and boy, that was the last thing you wanted to do, was cover that well up. So
if you've been out by City Hall, when they started the cable stuff, they spray painted things, and there's a big circle out in the street that says well. And there's an artesian well down there, and it used to be to a big concrete horse trough. And people would bring their cows by and water them there and put them over in that pasture where the houses are now. And so then a few people kept a cow in their shed and their backyard and pastured them out there. And Bill Richards would come with his horse and plow your garden for you. And if you were lucky, he fertilized it too.
speaking of fertilizer, you know, we at that time still had a honey dipper in town. And he'd come around every so often and clean out your outhouse for you. We didn't have septic systems until I was in second grade. Although there was a big event in Villa Grove when the mayor, was it Sheld Henson, put in the first indoor toilet in Villa Grove. And people asked him so many times about it that he finally just had an open house. People lined up to go through. And they said one farmer didn't understand about septic system. He just thought it collected down the basement. So it didn't look like a fellow ought to do that in his own house. Small towns, you have to take your entertainment where you can get it. I remember going to Dr. James Taylor's house to watch television. Now this is before Channel 3. Decatur. There was a TV station in Decatur. It was the locust one, closest one you could get. And a group from Villa Grove had gone over for one of those kid movies, you know. And so the rest of us, they divided us up around. But we went in and sat in their living room, and they'd put the TV up on a table. So it was about 30 kids, you know. And through the snow, we could make it, oh, there's Bobby, and there's Billy, and so forth. And that was quite a thrill. Because
I know Glenn Reedy had one, and you'd be watching Channel 5, I think, in St. Louis, and you go, and you're watching Channel 5 in Chicago, and you go back and forth like that. Of course, radio was a big thing. I almost drug the old radio out of the shed to bring it down here. That was our big source of entertainment.
Tell about when you were on TV.
Oh, well, we were on with the sock hop,
Well,
hop, but
didn't you
Tom and
cook
I
or
were
something?
in the 50s.
well, yeah, that was.
We were on Channel 3's Diane's Happy Home Show. We were making tea donuts, little round like donut holes today, you would call them, and you deep fry them, and then put flour, or put the, not flour, but sugar and stuff on them, and different toppings. And we'd make some to have, and then they'd go to commercial, and the guys would eat them all. We'd have to get right back and start making them again. So that was like in 54 or something like that. And
But Kathy's cousin got us on the hop and in 1960, and our senior class went up there and we danced to all the dances and did the commercials, and they gave us gift certificates, just cards that were good for a case of Pepsi or boxes of candy bars and things like that. They just hand them out like that. We were set for the rest of the year, I'll tell you. But there used to be a lot of neighborhood stores around too. That was one big thing. And my father, when he was postmaster, felt he had to patronize all of them. So we'd go here and get bread, and we'd go there and get milk, and then we'd drive clear across town to, was it 80s
English
Market, and get something over there. And who had the bear and the lion in town?
Oh,
Mackenzie's.
yeah,
Mackenzie's.
Yeah, they had a bear, a live bear, and a lion.
You could hear the lion roar clear in our house on the east side of town.
And you could smell.
They lived over by Faust, didn't they? Today?
Just north of Faust.
Yeah.
And, of course, our first grade, we got to go across the street to watch them shear the sheep. Pontius has lived on the corner there and had sheep, so we had the kind of cultural upbringing. And we had shows in the community building, community shows, different musicals and stuff, and they had all ages in them. And so,
They used to have traveling people that would come around with costumes and music and so forth and put on these shows. A group would sponsor them, and then the local kids and different people would take parts and things like that. And every year we had at least one musical, big musical event and big extravagant school productions where every kid in the class got to, or every kid in the school got to participate some way or the other. That's where I saw my mother become invisible. In the community building, the bleachers go way up and they'd be just packed full of people, and they'd have the rows of kids down here. Well, somehow or the other she got separated from her group of kids over there, and they weren't behaving quite the way that she wanted them to. So she became invisible and walked across in front of all of these people to correct those kids. But in her mind, they couldn't see her as she stealthily crept across. It was a good time. We went to school in the old grade school building, and they ring the
we had to go
bell.
across the street to eat, and the high school came down, crossed the river on the
But at
one-lane
first,
bridge.
they didn't have hot lunches, because we took our lunches, and I remember sitting on the swing set, because we try to trade up to see what you got, and this kid had a piece of bread with white stuff smeared on it. And he looked at my peanut butter sandwich, and I looked at his, and I said, "What you got?" And he says, "A lard sandwich." And that's why they put in hot lunches, because some people literally did not have, things to eat.
We had kids in our class come with no shoes to school.
But the first year they had hot lunches, they charged 10 cents, and they made too much money. They got a lot of government food, and they hadn't budget, knew how to budget, and so they had to reduce it to a nickel to finish out the year, because you couldn't make a profit, on your school. And we ate on the stage in the community building. Just line up and wait till it's your turn. They had army trays, and you'd have chili or vegetable soup or sloppy joes or just simple food. And then till one day, and it was good, but one day I noticed that they had a farmer coming around to pick up the scraps that they had left and everything. And I said, what do you have to do? They said, "Well, I have to take it home and I have to cook it before I can feed it to my hogs." And I said, "Well, wait a minute, they can serve it to us the next day and not do a thing to it."
We, in the summer, they used to put up a wooden floor, and you can roller skate, have rent skates and stuff out on the west side of town there. And so we had, and of course, we had the show. That was a big deal to have here. And of course, they had the pool hall. But what happened, Tom, when we tried to go in the pool hall?
The bartender looked at me and said, "Do you want me to tell your dad you're in here?" And I had to leave. And Rod Clare was over at the pinball machine, a banging and a twisting and everything. But that was all right. He knew his dad and knew he was okay to be here. And this was kind of a universal feeling. I did this forbidden thing. I walked the railing of the Front Street Bridge one time, and I waited till there wasn't anybody inside or anything, and I got through the metal part, and I got across the concrete, and a car came along, and this car pulled up there about a half a block and stopped, and I got clear to the other side and got off, and the guy got out, and he said, "That's very, very dangerous. That you could have fallen off, nobody would have seen you, you could have been hurt, lying down there, drowned, swept away, whatever. Do I need to tell your dad you were doing this?" I said, "No, sir, I'll never do it again." And I never did, I might add. And it wasn't until he got in the car and drove away that I saw he had out-of-state license on his car. But that's how people felt about it.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. Brings back a lot of memories, doesn't it? No matter where